Hi everyone, hope you're doing great. This is Maro. First, let me wish you all a happy new year. Hope it's much better than 2020. I know that's quite a low ask, but after the year we've had, I'll settle for that. So, for the first video of this year, I wanted to take another look at ARP Yamato. It was the first tier 10 ship sold in the game, and the move was widely criticized at the time by the community. I did a video at the time looking at how well did the players that bought the ship do in the game and concluded that while they did worse than the Yamato players, the margin was not too wide, and given the limited numbers, did not expect it to have a big impact on the game. You can see that video here. In this video, I want to take a look over a longer period of time to see how the results for the ship compare to Yamato, how many players are still playing it, and are there any new major conclusions that we can make. I'll be using maple syrup data for this video. In the background, it's my recent game in a new Japanese premium tier 9 battleship, Hizen. So let's start with a refresher. ARP Yamato was released into the game during a 2-week Arpeggio Blue Steel event from November 13th to November 27th. The ship is an exact copy of the Tech 3 Yamato, which makes it perfect for comparing its and Yamato's player base. In order to get to Yamato, presumably you play the game for a while to either grind the Japanese battleship line, or you have spent enough time in the game to accumulate a sizable amount of experience to free XP your way to Yamato. On the other hand, you could just hand over your cash to Wargaming and a tier 10 ship will be in your port, and you're ready to play at the top tier level in the game. Now, when I say top tier, I mean top tier in terms of ship tiers. It's been argued that tier 10 requires higher level skill to play well. I'm not sure if that is necessarily the case. However, perhaps you're more likely to run into better players at higher tiers, which may make it more punishing whenever you make a mistake. Wargaming's move to sell tier 10 ships for cash was seen as, at best, as an opportunistic move to grab more money from their players, and at worst, as another broken promise in a long road of broken promises that are taking the game in a direction that the active community strongly disagrees with. Leaving behind these larger, less tangible issues, what's interesting to me is how do these two player bases compare, and are ARP Yamato players, the cash players, worse stat-wise than Yamato players in general? So let's first get a sense of the numbers. How many players are we talking about? I gathered weekly maple syrup data across 4 regions, North America, Asia, EU, and Russia, and aggregated them for ARP Yamato and Tech 3 Yamato. I take a look for weeks starting November 14th, ending December 26th, so a period of 6 weeks. Here is what I found. The minimum number of players globally who acquired ARP Yamato appear to be 5,716. I get this number by looking at the second week total of 6,851 and assuming that all players from the first week, 1,135, also played ARP Yamato in the second week, making for at least 5,716 players that got the ship and then played her at some time during the 2 weeks. I'm assuming that no one bought the ship and then did not play it. The maximum number of players that could have bought the ship is the 3-week total, which is 1,135 plus 6,851 plus 6,294 for a grand total of 14,280. So the true number is somewhere in between 5,716 and 14,280. If we take a look at the number of battles, there is a lot of enthusiasm initially, with a large number of battles that dies down over time. So in the beginning, ARP Yamato hits almost 12 games per player, before falling down to Yamato levels of closer to 4 games. Now, if we make an assumption that on average every new player had 12 games in the ship, over the 2-week period, which covers our first 3 data points, then that gets us to 11,526 players. What's the right number is not known to anyone but Wargaming. Once we get the quarterly data, we will have clearer picture how many players at least played ARP Yamato, which we will use as proxy for how many were sold. But regardless of how many were sold, what is clear is that the ARP Yamato population is a fraction of Battleship players, and as their battles played revert to server averages, one can expect to see 10 Yamatos for every ARP Yamato. Now, moving on to all-important win percentage. If ARP Yamato players contain more players with little to no experience, then this should be reflected in the overall win numbers for the ship. And here, we know that the ship is the same. Well, almost the same. You could acquire the Yamato's unique accuracy upgrade with ARP Yamato. Not sure how many players have done that with the Tech Tree Yamato. I would think the change to research points would have slowed down the acquisition of the modules. In the past, you would get a number of missions that you would need to do before you could get the unique upgrade. This would require a fair amount of grinding. With the research points, the grind has been redirected to an entire tech tree line, and the boosted research point total, so you get 20,000 versus 19,200 for the module, if you only reset one line during the quarter. As a result, I would think that fewer players are getting the unique upgrade, making the players that recently got Yamato less likely to have it, and in that case are less better off than ARP Yamato players who could purchase it as part of the bundle. In any case, putting that aside for now, let's see how the win percentages for the 2 Yamatos look over this 6-week period. After the first week, or should I say the first day, when it appears better players got their hands on the ship, the win percentage is always behind the Tech Tree Yamato. The difference appears to be narrowing, so that by the end of December, it's down to 0.1%. Even at the widest, the difference is only 0.7%, so still not that large. For example, the difference between the Tier 10 battleship with the best win percentage in the third quarter, Bourgogne, and Montana is almost 8%. So the ARP Yamato players are keeping pace with Yamato Tech Tree players. So ARP Yamato tracks closely the Tech Tree Yamato. Nevertheless, in most categories, the Tech Tree version of the ship is ahead. average damage, Yamato leads. Ships destroyed, Yamato leads. Base capture and base defense, Yamato leads. Spot damage and gun accuracy, Yamato leads. The few categories where ARP Yamato is ahead are survival, kill to death ratio, and potential damage. Linked with gun accuracy and lower base capture and base defense stats, that would suggest that perhaps ARP Yamato players are playing slightly more conservative, sitting slightly further in the back. Now, does that mean these are less experienced players? Not sure, because there is a lot less YOLOing going on, which I would see more as a characteristic of less experienced players versus just sitting in the back. Now, I also took a look at World of Warships stats, and in those stats of players with more than 20 battles, ARP Yamato has a better winning record than the Tech 3 Yamato across the 4 regions. So where does this leave us? I think it's fair to say that the sale of ARP Yamatos, despite of what you may think of wargaming business practices, did not result in wholesale deterioration of Tier 10 gameplay as it is. Does this mean that we may get more of Tier 10s being sold in the future? I'd say probably yes. Will that have more impact in the quality of the gameplay in the future? Possibly. But for now, it appears that there is no significant negative impact from the ARP event, which honestly in itself is a little disconcerting. As either a lot of players that have been playing the game bought ARP Yamatos, or the quality of gameplay is at such a level that your game experience makes little difference to your outcome. I leave it up to you to make your own determination. As for myself, I'll choose the middle road. A relatively small amount of ships were added to the game that were bought by mostly somewhat experienced players that in the end had little effect on the overall gameplay. Let me know what you think. With that, we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I wish you best of luck on the high seas. Maro, out.